Welcome back. And in a previous class we had removed the water pump off of this 1957 John Deere 420 tractor, and we had a little bit of a battle with the bolts to hold the water pump on, because they are Allen bolts like this one that are countersunk into the face of the water pump body. And the problem that we had was that they were rusted into place on the outside. Where they were threaded in, the threads were fine. However, the heads of the bolts were stuck. So what I did was went over to the bench grinder and cleaned off with the wire wheel the heads of the bolts as well as the threads, and I will be coating both the head and the threads with Never Seas when we reinstall that. But we will actually be installing that hopefully in person next week. So what I'm doing today is, since I'm in the shop by myself, I'm just doing all the prep work to get you ready for that. So we will be reinstalling that. The one thing I did notice was the new water pump. There's one part on it that I need to transfer from the old water pump, and I'm just going to show you what that is. On the old water pump, there is a back cover right here that needs to be removed and needs to be transferred to the new one. So while that's off, we're going to clean that up. I began starting to take these Phillips screws out that hold it on, and the way that I did that was by using vice grips around the outside, therefore trying to spare the head of the Phillips screws so that I would be able to retighten them back in. Now that I've got them broken loose, I can use a Phillips screwdriver. The first thing I'll need to do is go in there with a pick and just clean out the heads of the screws. I did have one, however, that snapped off, so there is one that we will have to replace. But the fact that it snapped off in the old water pump doesn't really bother me, because the old water pump is going to go into the scrap pile. Now, with our water pump held firmly in a vise so that I don't have to try to hold on to it while I try to get the screws out, I'm going to see which Phillips screwdriver best fits, and I believe that's going to be a number 3 Phillips, which is the larger of the Phillips screwdrivers. And what this will do, and you want to make sure that whenever you're using a Phillips screwdriver, you want to make sure that it fits completely and fully down into the head of the screw. If it doesn't, you're much more likely to round that screw head or round that hole out and not be able to get that screw out. So as I said, these were broken free earlier with a pair of vice grips. So most of these should be removed relatively easily. And then we'll get that back cover off. Once we get that cover off, we'll take it over to the wire wheel and we'll clean it up and make sure that we have all of the residual gasket off the back side of it right here. And we'll also make sure that we have all the gasket cleaned off of the other side of it, so that we can put it back on and not have to worry about leaks. Now that all the screws are removed, I'm just going to slip in behind the cover, and I should be able to lift this cover off. And you can see I definitely have some cleaning up to do on the inside of this. It has some rust pitting in it, but nothing too terrible. So I'll be taking it over to the wire wheel and getting rid of all of the residual gasket. First I'll scrape it off, and then I'll get rid of all the old gasket material as well as all the rust. And then from there we should be able to reassemble the new pump. And I actually did find that I have screws to be able to just replace all 5 of them rather than just piecemealing it back together. So now I have 5 matching screws, and we'll put those together with plenty of Never Seas as well. Now that this back cover is off, you can actually see just how bad this water pump actually was. You can actually see how much the impeller inside of it actually moves around and how bad the bearing was. You can also see down in here how the impeller had actually been hitting the inside of the pump body. And I had assumed that would be the case for it, and that's why I just decided to replace this water pump as opposed to rebuilding it. I figured that there was probably, as bad as this water pump was, that there was enough damage to it to where it just didn't warrant rebuilding. And since it's not an easy pump to do, not an easy pump to replace, I really didn't want to put the effort into it only to find out that it failed a short amount of time later. So now I have my cover plate cleaned up at the gasket surface, and I have my gasket right here. So I'm just going to test fit and make sure everything fits back together nice and neatly. Okay, so I've just verified that all of my screws will go in, and I've made sure that they run in all the way without running into any thread problems or anything like that. So I was also apparently shorted one gasket right here in this set. So that is one that will be easy enough to make. So what I will be doing is we'll be making that one in class using gasket paper, and then we'll be putting it into place and assembling it once we get back, hopefully on Monday. So hope to see you all then.